What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. Now, your Miami Dolphins took a trip up to the Northeast to face the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football. It was billed as a potential Super Bowl preview, a litmus test, a measuring stick. And the Dolphins came up short, losing to the Eagles 31-17. Now, they're still in first place in the AFC East because earlier in the day, the Buffalo Bills lost to the New England Patriots, who the Dolphins will host this weekend. But a lot of concern, a lot of thoughts about the Dolphins coming up short against another elite team or a playoff caliber team in a playoff type atmosphere. Again, rough day, uncharacteristic day for the offense, season low in points, yards, first downs. As a matter of fact, 7 of those 17 points that Miami scored actually came from the defense via a pick six. The defense showing life.
But after a bad face mask call that was, kind of ignored, but
Yeah. That was kind of a ball don't lie moment. Ball gods, coming in. But on the defensive side, the defense, to their credit, forcing two turnovers, the big touchdown that tied the game at 17. After that, Philly scored 14 unanswered points. But again, just not the type of performance Dolphins fans expected to see against an elite opponent. Now, there are a lot of things to factor into this loss. One being that Miami was shorthanded. Now, I am not using that as an excuse, just putting it all in its proper context. The Dolphins they started the game without two of their five starting offensive linemen, left tackle Terron Armstead, Connor Williams. They were out 4 plays into the game on offense. Left guard Isaiah Wynn injured his quad. He was just placed on IR today, which means he's going to be out for at least 4 weeks. So 3 offensive linemen down. You're without Xavier Howard, who's not playing without a groin injury. You're also without Jalen Ramsey, who's not yet ready to come off of IR and play. So, you have to put that all in context. The Dolphins, they were down by 14 early. They tied the game up, but obviously the Eagles separated late in that game. I know a lot of people are talking about, are the Dolphins frauds? Are they still legit contenders? I will say this: I'm not going to go as far to say that the Dolphins are frauds. Like, I don't believe in that. I mean, when you've done, again, they're 5-2 through 7 games. When you've done some of the things that they've done, especially on offense, I think that you definitely deserve credit and praise and attention for that. I will say, though, we're now seeing this is the second game, as I said before, on the road against a playoff team from last year, against a legit playoff type opponent where they've fallen short, and we've seen kind of a similar script where they're losing in the trenches. They're not able to get enough stops on defense against an elite quarterback, and it does concern me because, again, these are the types of games that they're going to need to win. These are the types of opponents they're going to need to beat. The reason why, in my opinion, the reason why we're not so much having this conversation about teams like the Bills, even though they're 4-3 and they just had a bad loss to the Patriots, the 49ers, who have dropped 2 games in a row, or even the Chiefs, who have started off, I mean, they've won 6 straight games, but they haven't looked like the Chiefs, especially more so on offense. But all those teams have kind of a recent track record of performing in high stakes games, performing in the playoffs. The Dolphins are still a young team. They're kind of the fresh new team on the block. They haven't really proven themselves in that regard. Now, do I think that this is still a very good team? Yes. I still think this team I think they're definitely going to go to the playoffs, and I still think they're going to win the division. However, as we said, or as I said after the Bills game, the standard has changed. The expectations have changed. I already had very high expectations for them, entering the season. And then when you start off winning your first couple of games and in the fashion that you are, I expect them to be able to compete against the Eagles. Now, I rewatched the game. I don't think that it was as bad as, the final score suggests. I don't think that they're that far away from the Eagles or from the elite teams. I would like to see them get some of their guys back, especially Jalen Ramsey, who could make his debut this Sunday at home. I'd like to see them get Xavier Howard back, kind of have that defense at full strength, get some of those offensive linemen back, and then really see where they are. And I think in the coming weeks, we will get a more representative view of the entire team as a whole. But again, you got to show that you're able to beat these teams and play in these environments. And so far, the Dolphins haven't.
Well, there are a lot of things winning that game the other night.
I was gonna say I didn't even mention the penalties, and I know
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not even gonna get. I wasn't even gonna start there.
Yeah,
I was just going to start with the simple fact of the Eagles have arguably the best offensive and defensive line combination in the league.
Dolphins won't play a better combination of French play the rest of the season.
And you've got and you start off the game, you're down 2 starters. Okay, you've played that way, and then really early you lose another interior lineman. That's like you go, it's Philly, so we're gonna use this one. It's like going in a fight with Joe Frazier, and you got a really upset stomach. Guess what? You're gonna get hit in the middle, and it's gonna hurt, and you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to do well to kind of stay even in the fight, and that's what I saw happening early on. With the offense, it was like the Dolphins can do all these kinds of things, but football, it's still football. If you get blown up from the middle out, forget it. Whatever you're trying to do, it's going to work a low percentage of the time, and that's what happened. And so, and then they weren't helped by some really ticky-tack officiating. I'm not, I know I'm 56. I understand some of the, I understand
but sometimes you got to be able to overcome it. I know it was
yes,
it was a very dry discrepancy.
This is true. I understand that, but boy, and I'm not a fan of blaming the refs. Trust me, there's a lot of times I think, okay, maybe that wasn't a great call, but you kind of put yourself in a situation where you were victimized by the bad call. The 2 calls that jump out at me, out of all of them that night, it's really 2 that jump out, were the face mask on the 4th down that was missed. Yeah. I mean, which I was like, how do you miss that?
Yeah,
there's
the ref
7 people on the field.
The ref was
right. At regular motion, I'm going, that's got to be a flag, right? Yeah. Some kind of flag,
but like we said before, it did get kind of corrected with the pick 6 right after that. So it's like, all right.
Okay, that's a karma thing. You kind of
because the play before that, I mean, the Dolphins made their own share of mistakes, regardless. Right. I mean, Tyreek Hill dropped touchdown the play before the no call. So I mean, right. Okay, they made their share of mistakes as well.
Again, that's a situation where you're not playing that 4th down if you make the right play on 3rd down. And then, but okay, that call, and then the call on Christian Wilkins that extended a touchdown drive. That was just, come on. I understand you want to protect the quarterback. Come on now.
Yeah, there were some very questionable calls.
Those are the only 2. Yeah. Those are the 2 that stood out to me. Okay, everything else is like, okay.
I mean, there was also on Tua's interception late, which really was like the turning point, because after that, the Eagles went on a 6-minute drive that ended with a touchdown. McDaniel, I mean, neither McDaniel nor Tua wanted to talk about the officiating or whatnot, but McDaniel, and I had to actually see the clip again, he did kind of insinuate that he wasn't very pleased with the no call on Mostert on that interception. He said, I thought that essentially he said that it appeared the refs thought it was a legal contact or whatnot. And he's pretty much saying that, hey, well, the refs said it was, but I don't necessarily think that was. Right. There were some ticky-tack calls. There were some questionable calls. But again, in that type of environment, sometimes, I mean, like, everything's not going to be served on you on a platter. I mean, you go on the road, you go to Buffalo in early July, you go to Kansas City in early July, like, things aren't going to be served on a platter for you. You have to sometimes overcome it. And they still had opportunities to. I mean, they had the ball early in the 4th quarter with an opportunity to go there and tie the game. They had an opportunity to get multiple stops on a 6 minute, or was it 6 minutes or 10 minutes? How many? However, it was 13 play, 83-yard drive or whatever. They had multiple chances to get a stop and get the ball back in the hands of your offense, and they weren't able to do it. I know that there were a lot of stuff at play.
But I'm not surprised they weren't able to
overcome
get that. I'm not surprised they weren't able to get that stop. Your offense put up 10 points all night and really didn't, sustain many drives. So
I mean, yeah, I mean,
so by that point, what's going to happen? You think the running team might pound you a little bit late in the game? I think so. That's going to happen.
That's fair.
And like I said, they. I'm not, I think this became not as fair a fight as we would have liked to have seen early on. I honestly think I just, once they lost another lineman, I was watching the game going, oh, this is not going to be good at all. And that's what happened for the next, 50 something minutes. And, did the Dolphins make mistakes? Yeah. And are the Dolphins as good as the Eagles right now? You can't say that they are. I think this was definitely a case of, I think the Eagles are better. They were at home. It's a big atmosphere. Everybody was jacked up for this game on both sides. And I just think, yeah, the better team won. And, even take out the officiating, I just think that, the Eagles probably would have won it. The Eagles would have won anyway, but the Dolphins could not, the Eagles had control of the part of the field that you need to control to win a football game.
Yeah, I mean, we both picked the Eagles to win this game, and I said in large in part because I don't think that they're going to be able to win the trenches. I think that on the deep, I will say, I don't think it was all negative. Again, I rewatched the game. I actually I felt a little bit better about where the team stands compared to where I felt immediately after the game, because I think that for, even though they gave up 31 points, I thought that was probably the front seven's. I don't want to say it's their best game, but given the circumstances facing that type of unit, that type of offensive line, I thought the front seven played very well. You finally saw Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips together, consistently getting some pressure on the quarterback. I thought that was David Long and Jerome Baker's best game as kind of inside linebackers working together. The secondary still leaves a lot to be desired. And again, you're essentially on your third and fourth string, or your third and fourth cornerback. So you are going to give up some plays. But I think that there were some strides made, albeit in a loss. I thought that they did move the ball well. I mean, the first, I guess the second half, they moved the ball down the field outside of the final drive when the game was kind of over and Tua was sacked twice. They moved the ball down the field. It was like, all right, you have that one penalty that puts you back, a holding penalty. You can't overcome 2nd and 18. Like, it's really hard to overcome 2nd and 18, or 3rd and 18, no matter how good the offense is. They were to move the ball down the field. Obviously, we saw, Tyreek drops. Really, I mean, that's 6. I mean, if he catches that pass before the face mask, that's 6. Obviously, the no call. It is what it is. Again, in my view, sometimes, refs aren't going to be perfect. Sometimes you got to overcome it. I know people will say 10-0. How do you overcome that? Hey, it's got to be done. Not every team is going to be fully healthy. Not every team is going to get the benefit of every single call. But sometimes you got to overcome that. And again,
but you can't. Like I get sick of this. Next man up. You got to overcome it. Blah blah blah. You know what? There's a reason some people are starters in this league and some people are not.
But if we're gonna go by, if we're gonna go by that logic, then we shouldn't play the game. We shouldn't play the game when they ruled out Connor Williams and Xavier Howard. If we're gonna go by that, you can't tell me that there weren't. But you can't tell me there weren't opportunities to win that game. I mean, they had the ball with an opportunity to tie it in the 4th quarter. So it's not like, oh well, Dolphins had no shot at all.
There were opportunities to stay competitive in that game. There were opportunities to stay competitive in that game, and they did well to stay competitive in that game. That, and in fact, they came up with a big drive when they needed to stay in it, because, and this was looking like at 17-3.
Yeah, it was looking like it might be like the Buffalo game.
Yeah, this was starting to look ugly.
Yeah,
and I thought they did a heck of a job to stay in the game. But if I'm a sports bettor and I'm live betting that game,
yeah, there wasn't a point where I really thought that like the Eagles were threatened. But again,
exactly when it got to 17-17, I was like, wow, that's impressive. Like, seriously, I was like, that's impressive. I don't think the Dolphins are going to win, but they've done a hell of a job just getting to here, as everything's gone on. And no, there's never going to be a perfect game. There's never going to be, the officials aren't going to catch every call. You're probably not going to be perfectly healthy. Everybody's got their bumps and bruises and everything. But that said, there's a reason. There's a reason some guys are all pros, and there's a reason some guys are just a guy. And, when you're you have an all pro sitting, that's a problem. You're facing a front line of guys who, could be the daggone Pro Bowl line. Sometimes it seems like, each one of them. And now you're going with guys, you're playing your second string on three-fifths of your interior line. That's a problem. And you are at a decided disadvantage. That's simple facts. And all the, sloganeering of that coaches like to throw and broadcasters throw around doesn't change that. Are the Eagles a better team right now? Yeah, that's why they're a better team right now. Like, I don't think like the win injury is as detrimental against, well, maybe Kansas City with what's his name inside, but most teams, it's just not as detrimental. And you're not going to get socked around like they did, and you're not going to get socked around. It's the Eagles are a better team. They are, they might be the best team in the NFC, because look at what San Francisco's looked like the last 2 weeks.
I mean, they've had injuries as well. I mean, I know that's a whole different thing, but they've had injuries as well. So
they've had injuries as well, and they've also had they also had a funky performance, inexplicably funky, against the Jets. So, yeah, the Dolphins have not beaten a team that you would say is elite, and they have fallen short every single time for one reason or another when they played these teams. This was one it's not like I completely throw out the result, but like I said, I didn't see this one going much better than it went.
Yeah, I mean, we both.
After a few minutes in,
we both did predict the Eagles to. We both did predict the Eagles to win. I predicted more of a high-scoring game on both sides, right. So there is that. But again, maybe not the most representative view of the team, because they do have multiple guys still on injured reserve, some guys coming back.
But I think I think for the team confidence, the Dolphins do need to, Kansas City's coming up. They need to beat a Kansas City.
The funny thing about that is, I was thinking about this before we started recording. I don't think the Dolphins I think they're a very, very confident team. I think they're a very, very confident team based off what they've done, the first half of the season so far, and just, the environment that I don't think that they lack for I don't think they went in that with Xavier Howard and Connor Williams and all these guys thinking like, we're not going to win this game. Obviously. I'm saying it's more so. They are realist. But they're still going to go out there and compete or whatnot. Like I don't think they went to that game thinking that they weren't going to win, because
that's not my point. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is right now, they didn't go in that game thinking they're not going to win. They went in that game, they were going to play our asses off, and we're going to do the best we can, like you do every week. They're also realists. They're also bottom line people, and they can look at their own track record over the last year and a half since they became a playoff level team, and they can say, okay, we beat Buffalo at home early last season. What have we done? We played them close, and we got in. They did what they did. We're able to do with a third string quarterback last season, but this season, right now, this season, the Chargers are probably going to make the playoffs. Maybe if they don't.
Chargers are 2-4.
Charger it up.
That win has lost a lot of its luster since week 1.
Right, but see, that's also why I picked the Dolphins that week, because that's the Chargers, right? You look at their roster and you're like, yeah, this seems fine, and then they charger it up. But they lost to Buffalo and got kind of drilled there, and they lost to Philadelphia. I don't think they got drilled. I just think they lost. And I think as a team in game, and it sometimes plays out in game, because teams have a vibe. Teams have that. Okay, yeah, we know we're gonna get. We know we're gonna get this back. We know we're gonna do this because we've done it before. And then we've also seen the opposite where they're like, we know we can do this. We know we can do this. Can we? Because it's starting to go like it did against, like it did before against other teams of this ilk. I think, they're right now they're a good team, somewhere between good and very good, and that's where you have to keep them until they beat what KC.
Well, yeah, I mean
Who else on schedule?
they're still 5-2. They're still first place
Right.
in
Yeah.
the division. They're one game out, one game behind KC for the number one seed. So the loss to the Eagles doesn't necessarily have like the far-reaching implications that a loss to KC or down the line Baltimore, Buffalo will have. But again, the KC game becomes a lot more important. Maybe not just for the public perception, because I don't think public perception matters. Perception
No.
matters. I'm just saying for the reason why a lot of people are kind of questioning the Dolphins, accolades and the merits of their season so far. But now that that's number one seed on the line potentially. I mean, you lose that game,
Right.
you fall behind 2 games, whatever it may be. It becomes a lot tougher, to make sure you're not in a position where you have to go on the road. I mean, right now, I can't say that I have faith or trust in the Dolphins to win a road playoff game right now because I haven't seen them do it against the caliber of opponent that they would face in the playoffs. So the best way to avoid that is to take care of your business during the regular season and win games so that you're able to host games. If they can host games at Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens in early July, late December, and not have to worry about the cold, worry about the raucous environment, not have to worry about the doing silent counts, I feel a lot more confident than if they have to go to KC, if they have to go to Buffalo, if they got to go to Baltimore or wherever else it may be. So again, it's just one game. You don't want to react or overreact to it, but
right.
you just kind of
But
put
that
things in
exact thing that you
perspective.
just said, that exact thing that you just said, yeah, players have a different mentality than people outside the team, but players also, at some point they also have somewhere in the back of their mind, they're kind of like, yeah, we gotta win one of these games. So when it comes time December, January, February, hopefully February, what they're hoping, that they know they can do this, that this isn't just we got faith in ourselves that we can do this, but you're owing whatever against these kind of teams. The players know that, and that's why momentum is real. Things happen, and athletes aren't immune. And yeah, I think that KC game obviously means something for the seeding, and that number one seed gets you time off, which now only one team gets, and that would seem important. Get you home field, another thing, and it's also, hey, it's another chance to show that you can do what you think you can do, and at some point you got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're gonna have that opportunity to do that in 2 weeks in Germany when they face Kansas City. But first, they gotta head back home, host the New England Patriots, who at 2-5 are still looking up in the division, but they just came off a big win against Buffalo, so they can't be taken lightly for sure. All right, we're gonna take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, the NFL trade deadline is just 1 week away. The Dolphins have already made one in-season deal. Will they make another? We're going to discuss that as well as give our thoughts on Dolphins Patriots. So stay locked with us and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. Now, in the first half, we discussed the Dolphins' 31-17 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, what it means short-term, long-term for Miami. Now, we're going to start looking ahead, and we have to look ahead to the NFL trade deadline, October 31, next Tuesday deadline, 4 p.m. As I said before, the Dolphins have already made one trade for wide receiver Chase Claypool, essentially a swap of late round picks to get the fourth-year wide receiver. He actually made his team debut on Sunday, was on special teams, was on a couple offensive plays. So they're slowly bringing him into the offense. But with the team that's pretty banged up, some Dolphins fans have been clamoring, wondering if the Dolphins will make another move. Now, they could go a few routes, as I mentioned in a story that posted a couple of days ago on the Miami Herald website. There's some positions where they could use a little bit of depth, add a couple reinforcements. I think offensive line, obviously, we just mentioned losing a third starter and Isaiah Wynn. They could go that route. I mentioned defensive line, cornerback, kind of adding some reinforcements there. Obviously, they're going to get Jalen Ramsey back soon. They just activated Nick Needham from the PUP list, so that's another guy on the secondary you can get there. I also mentioned the possibility of maybe trading from a position of excess. When they're at full strength, they have a little bit of a log jam at running back and wide receiver. Is there a possibility that they can trade one of those guys, maybe get some picks back because they're going to need to kind of restock and stockpile their draft capital for future years? In terms of making a move to bring a guy in, I don't think they need to personally. I think that we just talked about how we haven't seen the full representative version of Miami Dolphins. I think that at full strength, I still believe that they are one of the, if not the most talented team in the conference. So I don't think they need to bring somebody in unless you're talking about, a Bradley Chubb type move that we saw last year, where you think that you're getting kind of a transformative player that's going to really change the complexion of your offense, your defense. Maybe they can bring in, I don't know who's available, who's on the trade block, but if maybe you're talking about an offensive line that you can plug in at left guard and you say, hey, this guy is going to change the complexion of our offensive line. He's going to solidify it once we get five guys across, all five guys back or whatnot. I don't think they need to do that because I think that, at full strength, I think the offensive line showed that it's a pretty good unit. I think on the defensive line, they've made some strides and made some improvements. Zach Sealer, Christian Wilkins, they're having the best years of their career in terms of pass rush. And then at secondary, I think they're going to be good once they get Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey back. I think that's like when you have those two guys out there. We talked about it last week with Ramsey returning to practice. It changes what you can do on defense. If there's one thing that I think we maybe could see, and it's a little tough because they have some injuries, maybe they do trade a guy where they have a little bit, I don't want to say too much depth, but they have some depth. And there's just maybe the numbers game isn't working. Because again, they have to bring some of these guys back from IR eventually. At some point, Jalen Ramsey is going to be on the 53. Teron Armstead is going to be on the 53. Achane is going to be on the 53. And, to bring a guy back, you got to make space. So if I see any possible move in the next week, maybe it's if they trade a guy because they say, hey, it's just a numbers game. It's just tough to see them kind of in the plan short term, long term, and maybe they're able to get an extra pick. But otherwise, I don't think that the Dolphins need to be buyers at the trade deadline. I think that they're in a good spot at 5-2. They know that they're going to get some guys back from injury in the next month or so. And then once you get those guys back, I think that you'll really start to see the team take off, and we'll see the real version of this team. What do you think?
Honestly, if I think, you obviously do your due diligence, as they say, make calls around, and yeah, you see who's available. I think honestly, if you can get a high quality interior lineman that can play in this scheme, that works with this scheme, because all offensive linemen are not created for every scheme.
Yeah.
And offensive line is obviously not fantasy football, so if they see that, maybe go for that. I never think you can never have too many good linemen to me.
But there's always I always flip it. How many teams are willing to offload quality offensive line starters, even quality depth? I mean, there's not a lot of depth out there. So how many teams are willing to give away depth? You got to kind of think you're trading away.
Exactly. But if if you can find it, somebody's doing somebody a favor, somebody just wants to, whatever, call around. If you find that person and there's a price there, okay. Other than that, yeah,
I think they're good. I think they're. I don't see
it's just
the injury. The
I don't
injury.
think I don't think it works the trade deadline does not, and trading in football does not work. In-season trading in football doesn't work the same as in-season trading in uh, basketball, hockey, baseball. Just doesn't, and
Yeah.
it usually doesn't.
I mean, at full strength, do you see any glaring holes on this team? So, like when they get these key guys back from IR, do you see any position that still needs a significant upgrade?
Not really.
I don't
And
either. Yeah, I don't either.
so, yeah, and yeah, so
Like
yeah,
if you're trading for
you don't want
depth,
to
like
make a trade. You don't want to make a trade just to make a trade. You don't
yeah,
want to never want to do that. Never want to do that. Even if you're one and whatever or oh and whatever, you don't want to do that. Because that just doesn't work.
yeah,
Everything you do has to have a point to it. So yeah, if they stand pat the trade deadline, that's fine. Uh, let's I think if there are roster adjustments to be made, I mean, I think you're going to wind up and you don't have the team you think you do. You're going to find out late in the season to make your adjustments in the offseason.
yeah. I mean, frankly, you can kind of if you want to put it this way, at least the way I'm looking at it is, some of the guys they're getting back for the stretch run. It's going to be kind of like a trade deadline deal edition. I mean, they're going to get Jalen Ramsey right around the time, the trade deadline is. He could make his debut this Sunday. He could return for the Kansas City game. Teron Armstead is eligible to return for the Kansas City game. Devon Achane is eligible to return for the Raiders game, I believe. So, you're getting some key guys that haven't played much of the first half of the season, and you've already gotten off to this 5-2 start. I think they're in a good place. But like you said, Dolphins general manager Chris Grier is always working the phones for a potential deal, and we'll see what they do ahead of the next week's deadline. All right. Before we get out, we got to talk about Dolphins Patriots. Patriots 2-5, a weird year for them, where they've just struggled a lot. But again, they came away with a really big win over the Buffalo Bills at home. Second meeting between these teams, the Dolphins won a close one-score game last a couple in week 2, I believe, week 2. But it was kind of I won't say disjointed effort, but when you compare all of the offenses performances over the course of the season, this was one where we did see New England able to make some stops. They, however, are without a couple key defenders. Matt Judon, Christian Gonzalez, both on IR, both starters who played in week 2, but they won't be playing now. This team is kind of night and day at home compared to on the road. When they're at home, we've seen them against Denver, against Carolina, against the Giants. We've seen them, and again, those are kind of bottom feeder opponents, but we've seen them play very, very well and look more like themselves. Even against a divisional opponent, I expect more of that. High flying offense. I think the defense, again, they gave up 31 points, but I was kind of cautiously optimistic about what I saw from them. Jalen Ramsey could make his debut. That's a possibility. Maybe they get Xavier Howard back. I think that place would go crazy if they get Ramsey out there at Hard Rock for his first game with Xavier Howard. Again, I think this is one of those games where, the Patriots, even though they came away with a big win against Buffalo, I don't think that, they match up well with the Dolphins. I don't think they really have over the past couple of years or so. I think the Dolphins kind of win this game handedly, probably 30-20 type of game, and they kind of get back on track ahead of what the game that we're really looking forward to, the game that I think will be a lot more telling as to the type of team or what team this is in Germany facing the Chiefs. But I think they take care of business, and we kind of transition into one of the biggest games of the year for Miami.
Yeah, I've noticed the past couple of years the Patriots have kind of they've given them problems on defense, and I expect they'll do so again. they, Belichick didn't just forget how to coach or
Yeah.
anything. Uh, and funny, the Dolphins will be without A-Chan also, and they were without him, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
he didn't play much. I think
Right.
he was active for week 2, but didn't play
Was,
much.
it was so.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of the same. In that way, the same unit. Jeff Wilson back.
Yep, he didn't
So
really play. He didn't really play much in the first game. In his first game back against the Eagles, but could see a bigger role.
yeah. I like the Dolphins like 28-17 in this one. I just think they're the better team, and I think they'll make that at some point. They'll make some play defensively that gives them a short field or gives them a relatively cheap touchdown, and that'll be that'll cause the separation that kind of ends the competitive phase of the game. So
Yeah, I mean, Hard Rock
yeah,
is turning. I don't have the exact stat. I was looking for it on my phone. I don't have the exact stat off the top of my head, but I think they're like 15-2 or 16-2 in their last games at Hard Rock. So, I mean, players have said it's kind of developing into its own little, home crowd advantage, home field advantage, whatever you want to call
yeah,
it. I mean, they're markedly better at home compared to away from home.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean,
and
yep.
the Patriots, they played their butts off against the Buffalo last week. I watched that game, kind of piecemeal, and actually watched kind of the second half, I think, solid. And yeah, they played their stuff, but Buffalo kind of did that funky thing that Buffalo can do. They
Kind of play down
they
to the level of their competition.
yeah, they kind of
Carolina.
messed around, and then it's like, okay, yeah, let's, now we're gonna win the game, and then no, you're not. You got to give up a 75-yard drive with a 50-yard pass right when you don't need to. And it's Buffalo showed exactly why it's hard to trust them as good as their record has been over the last few years, and
And as
as
good as they've
close
shown themselves to be
supposed to
in
be at
moments.
times.
Yeah.
You don't trust them. You just don't. And um, so I don't think the Patriots are as bad as they looked the previous weeks when they're getting outscored like 80-3 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're as good as they looked against Buffalo. So I just think this is a basic game. Division game. It's going to be a tough one. Dolphins at home. The Patriots will shut a few things down that the Dolphins would like to get, but the Dolphins are still going to have they can do a whole lot of they can hurt you so many different ways. They're going to hurt the Patriots, and they're going to score enough to win. Like I say, 28-17, I think.
Yeah. I mean, week 2, obviously in Foxborough at Gillette Stadium, Dolphins won 24-17. It actually came down to the last drive. Mike Gesicki just stopped a little bit short.
Right.
As you watched the game last week, he scored the game-winning touchdown. So he's kind of helped the Dolphins there, helped his old team there. He's kind of finding his groove in New England, and it'll be his first game back since departing. Tua 5-0 against Bill Belichick and the Patriots has not lost to them in games that he started. So you have
That's
that. For whatever
and,
you think
and
it matters for, that's something out
he
there.
played them all by himself, right?
Yeah, I mean, just 1 against 11 offense defense. But hey,
Yeah, the QB
just
records like
just throwing that stat out there again. The
yeah,
Dolphins
right.
hosting the New England Patriots this weekend. All right, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Quick reminder, as always, subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. We have Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, as well as other players speaking on Wednesday. So definitely stay locked to the Miami Herald website for all your Dolphins updates. We'll be back next week to recap another weekend of Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. See ya.
Hi, y'all.